one. So I know, Chris, you were just talking a second ago. How'd you find out what we were doing?
Yeah, I have a friend that he moved down from Chicago. He's done racing pretty much all his life, and he's been keeping, since he's moved to Georgia, he's been keeping up with just those types of events. So
Nice.
He got me involved. So
I will tell you, we've got a lot of people from the Midwest who have either recently moved here in the last 5-6 years moved here. Do you know David Nolan?
No, I don't.
Okay, he's also in a Chicago transplant, and we've got a bunch of them down here. And then
I just moved down here in November from St. Louis.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah.
I'm sure my friend is Dylan Jones. He probably maybe knows a few people who will be down here then. He was fairly involved with there.
Who was it?
So who? His name is Dylan Jones.
Okay.
But
I didn't personally know him.
I don't know. I've probably seen him before, but name's not ringing a bell other than it matches my name.
Well, it is 7:02, so I think we will go ahead and at least get started with introductions and such. Yeah, let me get slideshow going. Yeah, there we go.
I can't reach that.
All right, Mark, I'm going to go ahead and mute you as we get started, but do feel free to unmute yourself when it comes time to introduce yourself.
You did unmute yourself.
I thought I did. This is all new to me. This is the first time I'm doing this.
I think we got it.
No problem. Okay. So, welcome. Oh, no, there we go. Welcome, everyone. This is going to be just a little classroom session for the Intro to Autocross. We're going to talk about two separate topics. First, we're going to talk about the basics of how an autocross is held, how to prepare yourself and your car, and what exactly is an autocross, and how do we make sure we all get invited back next year or next month, whatever. And then separately, we'll talk about driving, how to actually drive quickly, safely, have fun, etc. Dylan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Dylan Brown. I've been doing autocross for 8 years. Started out in 2015, 2016 in a Ford Focus ST, and drove the crap out of that thing for about 5 years. Had a great time with it. Ended up getting rear-ended. It got totaled, and I switched over to the Miata you see in the photo there, and it's been a good time. I've done eight national tours, including some national ones out in Lincoln, Nebraska. A few track days here and there, AMP, Road Atlanta. Goal in the next year is to get over to Barber. But it's been a great time with a great group of people.
Dylan, you definitely need to let me know whenever you go to Barber. It's on my bucket list too.
Oh yeah.
So I've been autocrossing for 6 years. I started back in very, very tail end of 2017. I did one event before the season ended. I started that in a 2004 Volvo S60R. Very cool car. Decided I didn't want to pay for the maintenance on that thing. Switched over to a GTI and raced that very happily for almost 4 years. And then time came for me to get rid of the commuter car and jump over to a BRZ. So I've been racing that since end of 2020. I absolutely love it. If you're ever debating, should you get rid of your commuter car and get something rear-wheel drive, the answer is yes, you should. I've done 3 national tours. 2 of them were tours, and one of them was nationals. No, I've done 3 national tours and then went to solo nats once. I love track days, done a bunch of those. I just moved here in November, and I have already made it to Road Atlanta once. Heavenly track, and scared the living crap out of me. But I'll go back. It's good fun. Oh, and I run in the SSC class, which is a spec class, and it's the only true autocross class. Just
totally.
Curious.
to top that there at Nationals last year, I think C Street, the class I run in, had more cars. It's also a spec class of Miatas.
You've got it backwards. It's D Street that had 3
Oh,
more
yes.
cars than SSC.
61 cars last year went to that class. So going forward
right,
here,
yeah.
we're going to go over some event basics, kind of starting out with what happens when you show up, how to tech your car, what we're going to be going through on, how the event runs. So starting out, you're going to get to the event site and drive around the speedway about 3 or 4 times trying to find the entrance. Once you find that entrance, we'll haul you down. If you see someone that you need to, if you're lost, we'll look for the cars. We'll let you in. When you get there, there's a paddock space. Anywhere out there you can park. The closer to the concrete area, probably the better, so you don't have to walk as far. And the first thing we really want you to do is to get your car ready for tech. We'll have a sign-in table. You can get a waiver and things, but getting your car ready for tech is usually more important, and so you can get to that line. It does fill up fast. I think we're gonna tech your cars as with your instructors, just go around. But at our normal events, the tech line will fill up pretty fast, so it's good to have it done pretty early. You'll want to take everything out of your cars. If any of you have been in an accident, if you haven't, bowling balls or even smaller things will go flying. So you want to take everything out of your car. If it's not bolted down, you want it out of your car. Even though some things that are bolted down, if you want to save some weight, pull your spare tire out. Floor mats that don't clip in need to come out. Again, anything can be a projectile when you're throwing your car around as much as you can.
And let's be clear, it's not just things that are projectile and dangerous to hit you. Anything that comes loose at all is liable to fly around the car and get under a brake pedal.
Yeah.
I never would have thought this was true, but I have had my garage door opener unclip itself from its visor and fall on the floor at my feet. Everything out of the car.
The handgun. From on that one, we want your battery tied down. We'll look at that one. We'll make sure it's secure. If it's not, we do have zip ties. There are a few auto parts stores around we can get straps for or extra tie downs for. Looking at you, NB Miatas and NA Miatas, that is the number one thing we fail Miatas for. Followed by things that are leaking. So when you pull up to tech, we're going to look under your car. If you're actively dripping, we are going to stop you. We want to make sure that we're not getting oil and everything out on course. It's a hazard, and AMS doesn't like us doing that. We want to make sure your fluids are topped off before you come on Saturday. Please check your oil, your brake fluid, your coolant. Make sure those things are at a appropriate level. We do this for street survival as well because you're going to be throwing your car around. You're going to be moving the oil to one side of the pan and back. We want to make sure your car gets home in the same condition it came there in, and you can drive it there and back. And hopefully, if you love it enough, come back on Sunday. That includes things, so nothing broken on here. That includes things like your airbags, if you have them, your shifter, making sure your seatbelts are intact. We've actually had to have someone bolt their seatbelts back in on site. Some pretty crazy things. The big one for a lot of things here, if you've got audio equipment like a subwoofer that isn't bolted down, we will ask you to remove that. So that does include the flying objects things. We've had a car catch on fire before because their subwoofer rocked around a bunch and snapped the wire and it arced off of something. So we do have fire extinguishers. We don't want to use them. Past that, if you have a helmet, make sure it's we recommend SA 2015 or newer. The SCCA does still take an SA 2010. If you go to the SCCA Solo Rules 2024, they do have a link on there. You can see if your helmet applies. If you're worried about it and you don't know, we do have loaners on site, but you might want to bring a headstock for those. They've been around for quite a while and they will do the job, but they can be a little nasty sometimes. And the last one is numbers. So if you see the example on the slide here, we've got some white numbers that you can't see at all. So make sure the color of your numbers contrasts your car. If you want to get magnets, Solo Performance Specialties, Autocross Digits, there's a few that can get it. I don't think they'll be able to get it to you in time for this event. But painter's tape is the best novice tool to have. You can put big numbers in your car that contrast it. It should be pretty good there.
To be clear, folks, you do not need numbers for the Intro to Autocross event. We hope to see you Sunday,
Yes.
the day after Intro to Autocross, and for that event, you will need numbers if you decide to come out.
And you will get a copy of this slide deck here if you want to watch our David Nolan, one of our other autocrossers, embarrass himself for about 8 minutes and know everything about tech. You can go watch that video. The only thing I'll say on top of that one is if your car is caged and has a harnesses, we will go with that on site and we can deal with it there. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide here.
There we go.
Are there any questions on how to tech your car or anything with tech before I go on? If not, I'll move on here. So once your car is teched, you'll drive up. We'll tech your cars in grid. This go around at our normal events, there's a tech station off to the side. Once you get through tech, we'll stage you in the grid area. You'll go in, sign a waiver, and they'll give you which work assignment and heat you're running. And based on the heat you're running, and you'll put your car in an A grid or a B grid. And if you're one driver or two driver, we'll tell you where to go in that one. For Saturday, we'll have someone there waving you to where you're supposed to go. Just the only thing to remember is what group you're in. Are you running first or are you running second? If you're running first, we'll put you in a certain spot and we'll have someone there with a big finger in the air saying, not that finger, with their finger in the air waving you to where to go and how to stage your car up.
The tech inspection. I run a dash cam in my camera. Is that allowable?
Yes, our
Yes.
only requirement is for cameras and anything else that it needs to be actually mounted. A suction cup is considered mounted. That's fine. Just SCCA in general does not allow you to handhold any cameras.
Okay.
Just
All right.
as you're riding passenger or your friend or family is riding passenger, please ask them to keep their phones in their pocket.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I use a GoPro on a suction cup for most of my filming, and then I've actually got a few things I clip around my my screen for data analytics and things. So as long as it's secured to the car, you're good. So back to the grid side here, we'll stage you all in a line there. If you're running that heat, we'll basically have someone go and say, "Hey, 5 cars," and then you get in your seat, get everything buckled in, ready to go, put your helmet on. If you don't know how to clip a helmet, we'll show you how to do that. And we'll slowly bring you out to the starting line. When you're in the grid, please don't bring your tents, chairs, or all your other things with you. You can bring usually an inflator if you need to, tire pressure gauge. Please bring water on Saturday. It's going to be hot. We will have water, but not enough to give everyone all the water they need. We just bring extra just in case. But we don't have space for everything in there, so make sure you don't bring everything over there with you. If you do bring any kind of easy up tents, you need to have weights or something to secure it down with. We have had them blow away before, and that's something we don't want to deal with.
You mentioned the heat, Dylan. Let's make another point about that. If you have never stood in a parking lot on a sunny day when it's 97 degrees Fahrenheit, I need to prepare you guys. It's going to be real hot on Saturday. At last I saw, high was 97. It's going to be absolutely miserable. Solid plan, bring an umbrella. It really does make a difference. You won't be the only one out there carrying your own shade.
Yeah, you do have a few days left before it. You can go on Amazon. They make reflective ones for like golfers and stuff. Those are fantastic. They lower it by about 15 degrees under there.
Yeah, golf umbrella, if that's the right way
Yeah.
to go. You don't want to just use whatever cheap one you already have.
Yeah, hydrate beforehand. Drink a Gatorade the night before, and the morning of. Bring water, sunscreen. It's going to be a really good time, but it will be hot. So this is the end of the grid section here. The next one is when grid releases you to drive to the start. So go ahead and change the slide here, and I think that's on you now.
Yeah, so, all right, you've been teched, you're sitting in grid, your heat is driving, and the grid worker comes to your car and says, go. What do? If you're not the very first one in your heat, you're just going to play follow the leader. And you're going to drive up to the start box or the back of whatever car is in front of you if there's a line up at the start line. And when it's your turn to go next, you're going to drive up to the double cones. You should see someone waiting to send you. So you're going to drive up to the double cones. They're going to give you a hand measurement of how close you are to the starting point. For the Intro to Autocross, Doesn't particularly matter that you get it exactly, but they're going to do it because it's an autocross and we always do this. Your time, your actual measured time, does not start when the starter tells you to go. Your measured time starts about 20 feet further forward and will have laser lights, and that triggers your clock to start. We don't want you just sitting forever after the starter sends you. We do want to keep the ball rolling, so be ready. The starter is going to send you approximately 20 seconds after the driver in front of you. So you've got 20 seconds to pull up, get yourself situated any more than you need to be, and then go. You don't need to do a massive burnout. You're welcome to if that's what gets you off the line faster. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Depends on your car, tires, etc. Yeah, I think we. Okay, so sometimes you're driving on course and you're going to see someone waving a bright red flag. If you're driving and you see that red flag, please come to a safe, controlled stop as quickly as possible. We don't need you spinning out. We also don't want you driving half the course and coming to a very slow stop. They are waving that red flag because there's a potentially dangerous situation on track. Usually, that's just one of a couple things. Either another car spun out and stalled and they're not able to get out of your way quickly enough, in which case we need to stop you, prevent you from running into them. Or at our site, and the site that I came from in St. Louis, the most common thing is we'll have spectators, not really spectators, civilians just walking past because there happens to be a nice trail that people like to walk and bike down. They'll be walking past and they'll meander onto our course and we have to stop the whole course because they're now in danger. If you're working a corner and you see that happen, please do everyone a favor and try to get them off course as quickly as possible so we can keep the event rolling. So you're in your car, you're stopped, you're not going to move again until a corner worker tells you to go. When they tell you to go, please proceed at a reasonable pace. This doesn't mean walking speed. It also doesn't mean full race pace. If you hit a cone after being red flagged, we're going to be pretty annoyed with you. So get your ball moving, get off the course, but follow the course because we don't want you going off course and shortcutting the whole thing where corner workers are not expecting you to be and might not be looking at you and you could potentially hit someone. So follow the course, do it quickly, but not at full race pace. When you're working a corner, because that is part of this gig, this is a volunteer run operation, you will get to work a corner on Saturday. When you're working a corner, please check with your corner captain. They should hopefully be able to give you more instructions on what to do. Tell them you're a noob, and they will review with you what it means to be a corner worker. In general, when a cone gets hit by a car, you're going to run over to it as quickly as you can and in a safe manner, keeping an eye on whatever car is coming next because, again, there's another car coming in about 20 seconds. You're going to run over to that cone, you're going to pick it up, and you're going to put it back in the box. Saturday, we are not tracking penalties, so you don't need to tell the corner captain, hey, this cone got hit or this cone didn't get hit. At a normal points event, it would be your responsibility and your corner captain's responsibility to make sure that the captain, who has the radio, is aware that the cone you just picked up was either out of the box or not out of the box. And we'll talk about what counts as a penalty in a few slides. But that's the gist of it. No phones, no sitting, never turn your back on a car. These are all very important things. Again, cars, every 20 seconds, they are 2-ton, 3-ton. We got some EVs out there. They're big, heavy cars hurling at you at as much as 80 miles an hour. Autocross speeds, we try to usually keep it down to 60 miles an hour. But if you get some highly prepped Miata or Corvette, they will hit 80 miles an hour. You don't want to get hit by one. Water, bring lots of it. Bring more than you think. I bring, what is it? I think it's a 32-ounce and a 72-ounce water, and I expect to go through most of that tomorrow. So most of a gallon of water on Saturday. bring lots of water, please. It is a safety concern. And some kind of electrolytes, right? Salty water if you need to, but something.
Okay. Next thing here is just some good things to do at our events. The best thing you can bring on Saturday, other than a working tech passing car, is your attitude. We've had some people show up and they didn't pass tech the first time, and the best thing you can do is have a good attitude about it and ask us what we can do to help you fix it. The thing that'll make us the most annoyed and not want you back there is if you come at us in a very angry, aggressive way. We're there to have a good time. We're there to let you have a good time and to facilitate what you're doing on Saturday. We want you to come back in the future. We want you to become members of the Atlanta region and come back again and again and again until the end of time and bring your kids in the future. We have some families at Autocross here, and it's great to have them out there. We'll do our best to be in a good mood on Saturday, and we hope you do the same on that. So, some things you can do to help out, either in the grid or out on course. You can read someone's body language. We've had a few people, yell at course workers before. We don't encourage that, and we got onto them for that one. But when you're looking for cones, look for the car first, run and get it. It's better to be out of the way and let them stop and point at a down cone than it is to be in their way. But just be aware of everyone else's mood and when you're out there. If someone likes to be in their own head for their runs, just let them do that one. Just be aware of other people are humans there and be respectful of them. Again, for the cones, when a car passes, look to your left or right, whichever way the cars are coming from. Run for that cone. If it's bad, hold it up in the air. If it's good, make the baseball safe sign. I'll show you that in a minute. And put it back in that box, as centered in that box as you can. We'll show you the chalk outlines you get later on those things, and then get back out of the way. With your fellow corner workers, if you see someone who's getting a cone hit a lot, offer to swap out with them occasionally, or alternate back and forth. Again, it's going to be hot, so if you can alternate the workload out there, it'll help out. We're going to try and get you guys out there, in and out of there for, I think, an hour 15 at the longest for each session. It depends on what we end up running with the run groups. But we understand it's hot, and so we want to make sure you're not standing out in the parking lot for too long amount of time. There's a few things on here that will get you dirty looks, and if you do things enough, we'll ask you to leave and not come back. If you are late for your work assignment, we don't start the event yet. So when we ask for worker changes, we usually give a short break to go use the restroom, get some water to breathe for a moment. But then we expect you to get out to your work assignments. For the further work assignments, we have an ATV with a trailer. You can ride it like a chariot. It helps us get you out there. When you're in the paddock, please don't be doing any drifting, burnout, donuts, driving recklessly. There's no tire warming on site, and that's defined as, burnouts, fast driving around site. There's a lot of people that run, jog, and just live around the area that come around us. It's the only site that we have, that Porsche Club has, that BMW Club has, which there are also very good groups to go autocross with as well. If you want to autocross an absolute ton, you can run with all three of us. We have a few people that do that. But the local police know we were there. We actually had an event with them 2 weekends ago, and we were driving them around. They were driving us around in their cars, and we were showing them how to drive faster. And then again, just watch your language. Don't be mean to anybody. We're all just there to have a good time. We're all volunteers. If someone in one of the orange, yellow, pink Team Sella shirts is being demeaning and rude, please come see me, or we'll point out a few other faces there you can go to. We don't tolerate that in our own group, and we want to know if someone's doing that one so we can have that discussion with them later. Is there any kind of questions before we jump into the driving section here? I know we've covered tech, grid, starting your run, a bit of corner work and red flagging, and then some manners here. So our next section is going to be driving. If there's any questions now, we can answer those. I know we've been talking quite a bit here. And feel free to just unmute and ask. I don't think there's a raise your hand button in here.
All right, cool. We will go ahead and move on then. So let's talk about what I think is definitely the more fun thing, how to drive quickly around an autocross course specifically. Some of the topics we'll talk about apply to road racing as well as autocross, but we're going to focus on things that are specific to autocross. So we're going to talk about starting slow, building good habits, and then building speed, because it is much easier to get those habits in place and then progressively build up speed than it is to start with the speed and then try to undo the habits that you ingrained in your head while building speed. So what are some of those habits that we're going to try to build? We're going to try and make sure you look up. We're going to talk at length about what it means when we say look up, because that phrase in and of itself probably isn't very useful. Smooth is fast. Probably all seen that or heard that in various movies. Let's talk about what it really means to be smooth, because if you watch some videos online where you can see a driver's hands or feet, it might not look smooth. And so let's talk about the subtle differences of smooth versus jerky. Driving the racing line. What is the racing line? How do you figure out the racing line? For a road course, it's pretty simple. You go on YouTube and you find someone who tells you what the racing line is. For an autocross course, you're not going to find a video of someone else doing it unless you're lucky and it's the day of and you can go watch someone else. But really, to get good at this sport, you need to be able to look at a course and understand immediately what the racing line is. So we'll talk about how to figure that out for yourself. Backsighting cones. This is autocross specific terminology for a very generic term, and we'll talk about why it's so important in autocross and what it is. Apexes. In every form of motorsports, it's important to hit the apex. We'll talk about various ways you can touch the apex and what it means with different late and early apex terminology. Walking the course. Again, with a road course, a racetrack like Road Atlanta, you just get on YouTube, you get on your sim racing rig, and you can memorize the course pretty quickly that way. Autocross changes every single event, so you don't have a chance to learn the course ahead of time usually. And so what we do is we literally walk the course the morning of the event. At least once, depending on how good you want to be, you might walk it multiple times. And talk about what you're looking for when you walk the course. And then finally, we'll get into vehicle dynamics, understeer, oversteer, etc.
Okay, so the first thing I want to go over here, and we'll go over this again when we're actually walking the course with you the day of, is what some of the common elements you'll see are. The very first one we're going to show you it's a pretty complicated concept. There's going to be a cone on either side of you. You need to go through those two cones. There may be a pointer cone, which if you look at the left-hand image in the middle, there's a cone that's laying down, pointing to the cone itself. Those mean you need to go on that side where the cone is pointing. So oftentimes our gates will have two cones laying down on either side of them, or four cones laying all the same way. Sometimes we just do it to make a bigger visual effect. But the first thing you see there is a gate. The second image is a kind of sweeper turn. There's four cones on the outside. They don't really matter unless you're having to turn back to the right afterwards. The only one that really matters there is that one that's in the middle with the pointer on it. The next one down, I like to call that one a bus stop. A lot of times there'll be some high-speed elements of the course, and we know we need to slow you down to prepare you for the next thing or just to give you a challenge. And so we give you this box you can kind of dive into really deep. But if you go all the way in there to the right, you'll end up having to slow down a whole lot more than you could rather than just kind of diving out of the way and flooring it again and go. We do design the course to stay below, 80 is a little high on there. 60 is the goal for street cars. And if you do the course right, you can stay pretty close to that for a lot of it. The right image is the slalom. The key thing here is that first cone has a pointer on it. The second, third, and fourth cone there don't. You just alternate which side you go on as you go that there. Again, we'll explain that again the day of. When we see a slalom, it's easier when you actually can physically walk it. One thing that I like to mention for new people is that when you walk a course, walk it the way you're going to drive it. So don't walk just a straight line down the side of these cones. Actually walk back and forth in between the cones. It does help there. I always do it. So my wife autocrosses with me occasionally. When we do course walks, if she walks on the wrong side of the cone, I just look at her and say DNF. A DNF is a did not finish. It means you went outside the course bounds, and your time for that run doesn't count. So we just mess with each other on that one. I am going
Specifically,
to stop here on this one.
I will walk where I think my driver's seat will be in the car, because that really changes the perspective. I know some people will actually kneel down at some points to get that perspective, but I'm not going to walk 5 feet away from, this first cone in the slalom. I'm not going to be way over here, because I'm going to get an inaccurate perspective of how tight this slalom will be. So I'm going to walk right next to this cone, because my driver's seat is only going to be about 1 or 2 feet away from this cone. And then as I get to the next one, my driver's seat's going to be more like 5 or 6 feet away from this cone. And so I will walk further away from the second cone in this slalom when I walk the course.
Yep, we'll have you walking with your instructors as well, and they'll be explaining the same concept. They'll stop along the course. They may even have they might pace the distance between slaloms to see the kind of cone distances you get. If you want to learn how to design a course, there's some really great online resources, and actually knowing how to design a course will help you be able to drive a course, because you can walk some of these things and understand my car should be able to go about this speed through these things. When you first do your first run, you're going to be going a little slower, and you'll learn as you go, hey, I can go faster here, I can go faster here. And so as you do this for years and years and years, you start learning, I can take a slalom this distance at this running speed and driving speed. An element may look really far apart on the map, or when you're walking it, it comes at you so much faster. So is there any questions on kind of where to go on one of these elements here, or what a slalom is, or what things you might expect for a course there?
All right.
If not, we
How,
can go ahead.
Yeah, from the time that you get through one run, like about how often will you get to do like the next run? Just trying to think like for repetitiveness, because I know the first few never doing this, really kind of slow and whatnot.
It's entirely dependent on how many drivers we have at an event. To give you some ballpark, SCCA autocross rules say that you shouldn't, sorry, I'm going to phrase it. They dictate that you should have 5 minutes between when you reach your parking spot in grid and when the grid worker sends you again. That's the minimum that we try to aim for. 5 minutes, we figure, is enough time to get out of the car, check your tire pressures, get a quick drink of water, take a minute to breathe, and then head out for your next run. We don't want to hit that minimum. We want you to have more than 5 minutes, but in my experience, a good event where I feel like I have the right balance is closer to 15 minutes between runs. That gives me much more time to, in a more relaxed state, check the tire pressures, get that drink of water, and for me, review data from my data analytics system and video and whatnot. But that doesn't always happen. A lot of times we'll be right at the cutoff between whether it's reasonable to run 2 or 3 heats. We try to run 3 heats. Even if those heats are shorter, the day is generally better if we can do 3 heats. So we will sometimes have shorter 3 heats than longer 2 heats. But if we can get this bigger and better, we'll have longer 3 heats, and then it's much better.
Yeah, I believe for Saturday it should be about 8 to 10 minutes between your runs if we are running how we're supposed to be running, which means you've got time to pull back into grid, talk to your instructor for a minute or so, breathe, and then get out of your car and socialize. Or if you want to review your last run in your head, you can do that. But this is a social event as well as a driving event. If you're wanting to get out and talk to your people around you, more than welcome to do that one. Again, same as day of as now. If you have any questions the day of anything on your run, let us know. Or if there's something your instructor's not answering that you want to know more about, you can always ask us too.
And thank you, Dylan, for bringing up the socialization aspect of this. I sometimes take this whole hobby a little too seriously, but it is really important to actually have fun, not just get too serious about the
Oh yeah,
sport.
if your goal is to go fast, let us know. We'll help you get fast. If your goal is just to be able to find the course, we'll work with you on that one. We've got guys who run at nationals who got a car reclassified to a lower class. They got a Ford Crown Vic. They painted it like Nyan Cat and rainbows, and spend the entire course having a riot the entire time, and everyone loves it,
Absolutely.
except for some fuddy duddies. But anyway, we'll move on to the next slide here and keep going.
Yeah.
So we've got the same slalom 5 different ways here. The first one is the most minimal way we can possibly mark it. We've got a pointer cone on one side of the cone, and you just slalom back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until it's done. Version B right below that one, we've done the exact same thing. We've just added cones that you really don't need to care about. If you're out that wide, you're going too far in the first place. Version C, same way. We've added a lot of extraneous cones. And again, to the point where you don't need to look at those. They're just there to distract you. Now, version D, we did slightly change it. It's the pointer on the other side of the cones there. Actually, no, sorry, it's the same one. It tricked me. Dang.
The pointer moved. It's
Yes.
technically a 4-cone slalom instead of a 5-cone
Yes.
slalom.
But you come in and you treat it the same way. So the really good point of the slide is it points out that a lot of the cones don't matter. So when you do your first course walk, just find the course there, and if you want to go again, on the second course walk, you can kind of start figuring out, I don't need to pay attention to that cone or that cone or that cone, and that really helps make the sea of cones effect you might see go away a lot. Couple things for this slide here as well. When you do these slaloms, you want to be very close to the cones the entire way through. And I'm going to tell all of you now, turn in sooner than you think you need to turn in, because otherwise you will be late and you'll end up hitting a cone. Most likely it'll be that third cone right in the middle there, or the fourth cone. Those are the 2 most hit ones. Think of that as well when you're doing your work assignment and where you're standing, because and we'll be out there helping you as well on the work assignments for some of these. But it's good to know when you're doing our regular events, when you go to do a work assignment, if you see certain elements you start learning, that cone's going to get hit a lot more, and you can think of how you're going to not hit that cone. So let's go on to the next one here for penalties. So if you hit a cone, it doesn't always count as plus 2 seconds. If a cone is a pointer cone, it does not count at all. Typically, if you only hit a pointer cone and not a standing up cone, you've usually gone off course and gotten a did not finish. However, in the first example here, you said that cone is down. If you take out both the pointer and that cone, that still only counts as 1. It's key to note that that box we draw on the ground is very important. If you look at the OK, no penalty, if you see how that is set, that's how we want the cone set back in the box every time. Way back in the day, they used to make it so you couldn't touch the cones, and they put a tennis ball on top of them. And they pretty quickly learned that when someone knocks a tennis ball off the course, there's a bunch of adult men and women running around on course after tennis balls with cars moving around, like a dog running out in the middle of the road. They thought it was a bad idea. So they changed it to where you can still run over the corner of the cone. You can still move that cone inside that box. If you're lucky enough, you will punt a cone, and it will fly straight up in the air and land back in that box, and it won't be a penalty.
And if you're really, really lucky, Jeff, our photographer, will get a picture of you doing
Oh my goodness, yes. I've got one of those from Nationals, and I love it. The key things to note, though, is if the cone is outside of the box or it is laying down, it is out. If it is upright and touching at all in any part of that box, it is good. It does not count against your runs there. That seems to be our number 1 point of contention when we have people working versus people driving. The thing I'll note here as well is that if you see a down cone on your run, you can stop and point at that cone and then start moving again back at the pace you want to go, and you will get a rerun. And that works for down, out, and then the far right OK, because that cone could be out far enough to be against your favor, and it's not a fair run to you when you're running a competitive run. For Saturday, I don't think we need to do the point for down cones, but if you
Yeah.
do come back Sunday, you only get 6 runs on Sunday, and so if you want every single one to count, it matters. For the people that run my class, we only get 3 runs that count, and so I will definitely stop for a cone that's out if it's going to benefit my next run. It has hurt me before, though, because one of my fastest runs, I stopped and pointed, and then I hit cones every other run after that one, and it was awful.
Oh,
So for the penalties there, we'll again go over that day of. It's just good to know ahead of time. The next thing we're going to note is what a DNF is. So a DNF is a did not finish. That means you went off course somewhere, you missed a gate. The left side here, not a DNF. You went on the proper side of the cones. The right one here, the middle one here, you went too hard into the cones and spun. Looks like you spun twice. And you got back in and got back on course. Also not a DNF. Your run's probably still shot that way, but it still counts for your time. And if that may still be your best run of the day, you're going to be bad if someone calls a DNF in on you. The third one is a DNF. So see how you went on the wrong side of the Patrick Star pointer cone? That is a DNF. You've gone off course. And while that might be a faster route to take, it is not indeed a proper route. If you DNF, don't panic. It happens to the best of us. Sometimes you just want to bail and not punt a cone with your car. Still keep going through the rest of the course and make sure you go through the start and the finish lights on your runs. That's one thing to note when we're working later as well. There'll be there's timing lights there. We'll show you where those are. Do not run through those. Timing will not be your friend.
as in when you're working the course, do not physically run through the
them.
lights to pick up cones. Yes.
So on to the next slide here. So how to avoid a DNF. Walk the course with your instructor and ask questions. We should have flower outlines on the outside edge of the course to help you keep you between the rails. But if you're on the flower line the whole time, you're probably not going the right way. So walk the course and then walk it again. It's a good way to get your steps in for the morning. Identify element groups. So don't just go turn to turn to turn visually. Kind of identify where you'll be accelerating, because a lot of times there'll be a set of elements where you'll be accelerating through all those before you have to break it all, and then repeat the process, and you can kind of group them into sections in your head. Walk the course again. Again, walking the course more does help. When I go to nationals, it's usually a 4-day event there. I'll walk the course twice on one day and then 3 times the next day, and then the morning of my runs I'll walk it again. For a Saturday, 2 to 3 times is about all you're going to need, and I think about all we'll have time for. The next thing, and this applies to road racing as well. Go ahead.
Jump in real quick. So for walking the course, guys, at minimum, you need to walk it once. If you arrive late, are busy doing something in the morning, for whatever reason, if you don't get a chance to walk the course, try to find someone to ride along with before your first run. That way you can see the course.
Yes.
When I am attending an event, I make a conscious decision for myself about whether this is an event that I care about. You need to make your own decisions about whether it's an event that you care about from a competitive standpoint. When I have personally decided I care about this event, I guarantee you I will have that course fully memorized before my first run. Doesn't mean I do that every single event. Sunday's event, I don't know, I might be too tired, might not actually matter to me. I may not get any course walks in after my first one. But if it's a national event, if it's, I'm running against a competitor and we're right there on the championship points, you betcha I'm going to have the full course, every single key cone memorized before I take my first run.
Yep, that's a good one to have on there. Yeah, walking the course does help a lot in there. Some people at nationals walk it backwards. Some people jog it. Some people, go in different ways. If you do need, if you have trouble running, let us know at the beginning of the event. Or if you can't stand for long periods of time, let us know. I believe there was a question on your waivers there just to make sure of. But if you need to use a scooter or something on there, we don't typically allow that one unless you have a disability or some reason you can't walk the course. But we can accommodate as needed on that. The best thing you can use to avoid a DNF is look ahead. If you're driving cone to cone to cone to cone, you're going to be slower anyway. So chaining elements together into groups does help, and keeping your eyes up and your head on a swivel. your vision does not end at your A pillar. So you can stick your face straight to the left, straight to the right. We've got U-turns you can look at. Looking at where you're driving will help you drive where you're going. There's a great human phenomenon, especially on motorcycles, called target fixation, and you will go where your eyes are looking. Let's go on to the next slide here, and I'll let you take over.
All right, so racing line. What is a racing line? How do we figure it out? In general, it's the optimal path to drive around the track for the fastest time. That isn't the same for every car. Even if a turn is the same between two racetracks, the racing line around that turn is going to depend on what other turns and straights are around it. So the racing line is variable. It can change just based on the surface conditions, track temperature, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of things can change the driving line, the racing line, synonyms here. In general, those kind of like surface conditions and vehicle characteristics and stuff, it doesn't drastically change the racing line. It doesn't usually change a racing line from early apex to late apex. Surface conditions might move a driving line, the apex point, a few inches or a few feet. It's not going to make a drastic change. Yes, it's mostly the same for all cars, right? So we talk about Miatas are momentum cars and Corvettes are power cars, and therefore they're going to have different racing lines, and it's not as big of a difference as you might imagine. So there are subtle differences, but initially, as a new motorsports hobbyist, it's not actually going to matter. The differences are so subtle that you should just ignore what kind of car you have. Drive all of them the same. Yeah, we'll just move on. Okay, so early apex, late apex, and geometric apex. We're talking about in this concept. First, we need to understand what is the apex. The apex is not the middle of the corner. That's what I certainly thought it was for a long time. The apex in motorsports is defined as the point where your car comes closest to the inside of the turn. That's what we define as the apex. So in autocross, we're going to draw the apex as a cone instead of an inside curb. And therefore, it's really simple to define the apex as wherever you touch the cone. That's the apex. On a racing circuit where you have a long curb, the apex is going to be wherever you actually come in and touch the curb. If you touch the curb at the end of the turn, that's a late apex because you came in and hit the apex late through the turn. If you turn in early and you hit the apex at the beginning of the curbing, that's an early apex. And this helps you kind of imagine what it is on an autocross course as well, because the easiest way to figure out on an autocross course if you did a late or an early apex is to look at the angle your car is pointed when you pass that cone. So in the early apex situation, your car is still mostly pointed in the same direction you were pointed before you reached the cone. You haven't actually started turning yet. If you do a late apex, you have completed the majority of your rotation before you get to the turn. In most of motorsports, and this is especially true in autocross, almost every turn should be a late apex. And we will talk more about why that is. But for the moment, I think it's best to just trust me when I say almost every turn is late apex. Get the majority of your turning done before you get to that cone. It's really hard to do because as you come out of the previous turn, your eyes are going to get fixated. You're going to have target fixation on this cone. You're going to try to avoid it, but it's going to happen. And you're going to beeline it for that cone. And then you're going to get there and say, okay, now what? You're going to look up and you're going to realize the next cone is way over there, but you're already here. At this point, you have now done an early apex and you are slow. This is where looking up comes in. As you come out of the previous turn, you need to spot your braking point and your your exit point for that turn. And as soon as you've nailed the braking point, you're already moving to the exit of the turn and the entry of the next one. So we have here a sample autocross course. Our start is over here. The red circles, by the way, are just safety circles. Inside each of these red circles is an actual light pole on our parking lot. So this is how far we keep cars away. So just ignore the red circles. They're not actually part of the course. Very much not part of the course. We start between these two cones right here, and we have a slalom. You immediately know it's a slalom because it's a bunch of cones in a line. That's the definition of a slalom. We see indicated right here a pointer cone. So we're going to come out of the start, and we're going to start on the right-hand side of this slalom and go through, exit again on the right-hand side of this slalom. We have a unique element in this diagram. We're going to go around this circle one time, come back around, and then we have a bunch of pointer cones. This is typically what any autocross driver would refer to as a sweeper. That just means a long, relatively constant radius turn. Sometimes they're decreasing radius turns, sometimes they're increasing radius turns, but a sweeper on an autocross course is a very common thing because autocross courses are usually held on parking lots, and on parking lots you usually go down one side and then do a sweeper and come back down the other side. Sweeper. So we do our slalom, come around the circle, we sweep around the outside of here, and then we have a Chicago box. This you can consider as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You can consider this as 11 individual gates. There's a gate, there's a gate, there's a gate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all you do is you come around the sweeper and you drive through all 11 of these gates, and then you come out the other side. Gate, 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 and finally a finish gate around here. Okay, so what's our racing line through here? Well, late apex, everything. If we consider each one of these cones a separate turn, shouldn't really, but we'll talk about it like this for the moment, then you would late apex this one, which means you're going to have already completed your turn. However much of that turn you need to do, you're going to have completed it as you pass this cone. So when we cross the start line, we're not going to be headed in this direction, because if we drive in this direction straight towards this cone, we have no room to point our car in the right direction before we get there. So we need to make some space to the left of our car so that as we pass this cone, we can already be pointed in the right direction. Now, I can't get that angle right with my mouse. It's very hard to show. You'll be able to get a feel for this better when you're walking the course and your instructor can tell you, you should be pointed in roughly this angle. Okay, but the idea is that as you pass this cone, you're going to be already pointed in this direction, and that's going to allow you to make your right-hand turn for the next cone right around here-ish. So you're going to come around here, turn, and already be pointed in the right direction for the second cone, and then turn. And if you've done that correctly, you're going to pass the fourth cone in this 5-cone slalom pointed to a little bit to the right. When that happens, if you've done that correctly, you're going to be able to start accelerating way back here at the 4th cone. This is where the backsiding, sorry, I never got around to explaining that. Backsiding is just autocross terminology for late apex. If you backside this cone correctly, you're going to be able to get on the throttle because you're going to have all of this space to accelerate before you get to this turnaround right here. If you blew it, if you turned in too early and therefore you made an early apex, or you were coming in too hot and you couldn't make it around the first cone and you never even approached it, you're going to be late through this whole thing, and you're not going to be turned to the right to make it through this, or make it turned in before this 5th cone until you're way out here, right? So let's say you come in too hot, you can't get turned into the left, and you barely squeak by this cone. Okay, now you have to turn the wheel to the right, and you barely squeak by the third and the fourth because it's very hard to catch up in a slalom. You barely squeak by this one. Well, your car is pointed basically at the sidewalk at this point because you've blown past all the cones. And so you still can't accelerate because if you start accelerating toward the sidewalk, you're definitely going in the wrong direction. So you're still not getting on the gas. You get the car turned around. You're way the heck over here. You're now 120, 150 feet later and unable to accelerate, and you won't even get an acceleration zone. So everything is a late apex because when you late apex, you can start the acceleration for whatever straightaway comes after the current element much sooner. Do you want to start accelerating back here, or do you want to start accelerating way over here? Those are your two choices, really. The line around this circle or a sweeper, any constant radius thing, it's pretty much always just stay as tight as possible. If you stay tight on these cones, your car is going to be going very, very slowly. It's going to feel slow. You're going to think you're doing worse. Promise you're not. Your time is going to be faster if you stay tight to these cones, and then you stay tight to these cones. As you come around here, you probably don't want to have your car pointed directly. In this case, it would be horizontal or directly to the right because you're not going to have any space to make it through this Chicago box. So in this specific situation, you might, it depends how much space you have between this cone and this cone. You probably do want to be on this cone, but maybe pointed in this direction so that you can make a little bit of space to the left of your car and get turned in to the left to enter this Chicago box and then get turned in. This Chicago box, though we have all these extra cones out here, is the 3-cone slalom. Karen, if you can find the unmute button, go for your question.
Oh yeah, I had a question. So, I mean, regarding the Chicago box, depending on the distance between that last cone out of the sweeper and the Chicago box, like, would you want to adjust to where, like, you might want to come out on the outside a little bit so you can kind of come into the Chicago box a little bit better?
Sure, yeah. If we take that to the extreme, which is how I always figure, if I'm unsure about something, I take it to an extreme. If these two cones were right next to each other, you would not want to be right on this one. Well, at least that's not quite true, because if they were right next to each other, you would want to be right on this one. Let's say they were 5 feet apart. That's pretty darn close. You wouldn't want to be touching this cone because that's not enough space for you to get your car turned around for the Chicago box.
I've got a
If
question
they
back at you
are,
there.
sorry,
Karen.
Dylan, you said something?
Hey Karen, how many of those cones in that Chicago box matter?
One, basically. Or maybe all of
I'd
them?
say 2 or 3.
3, yeah. The one on the leftmost side, the middle, and then the one on the rightmost side.
That is correct.
It's kind of a mini slalom almost, where you just have to get through it without
Exactly.
touching the floor.
It is very much a mini slalom.
The rest of the
It can
cones are there to scare you.
Yeah, it looks really scary. Chicago boxes are almost always very close together. You can see this map shows that at 50 feet apart, whereas this slalom is 60 feet apart. Chicago boxes are just designed to do that. It would still technically be a Chicago box. Not that that's a technical thing, but if it were bigger, they just always are tight. In this scenario, all 3 key cones in the Chicago box matter. If the next gate were further to the right of the Chicago box, this last cone probably wouldn't matter because you shouldn't be that far out anyway.
I had another thing to add. So
Sure.
I guess it'd be really important. You see that, like, the middle cone in the Chicago box? It'd be really important to hit the late apex out of that, because then you'd have to come and wrap around for the next gate, right? So you kind of hit the really late apex. You don't want to like run a huge amount of steering angle because that'll slow you down a lot. So you kind of want to come out there, have some space so you can turn into the next gate, because like these next few gates, they're not really that they're not placed in a way to where you can kind of just like run through them. It's not very sweeping. So
Yeah,
you really got to get
absolutely right. This is extremely important to get a late apex around this center cone of the Chicago box. You have enough space between the exit of the Chicago box and this gate over here. This is considered a pretty long straightaway. And so if you overcook it coming into the Chicago box and you're not turned to the right until, say, here, that means your straightaway doesn't start until probably way over here. But if you get a good entry and you get slowed down enough that you can do your turn here, then your straightaway starts way back here before you've exited the Chicago
Because like
box.
if you don't turn in fast enough, you've kind of turned that right side of the Chicago box into a hairpin where you have to maneuver around that cone and then get into the straightaway.
Correct.
Exactly. And this is all relative. It's Chicago box 50 feet. That may be hard to imagine when you haven't been on an autocross course yet. That's going to be a hairpin. It's going to be a very slow, painful turn. But it will be even slower and more painful if you overcook the entry. So, yeah, go for it, Chris.
Just, I don't know if I missed something on so with the cones pointing, the pointer cone, for the Chicago box, it's pointing down with that. You typically go on the side of the direction that's pointed. So would that be the other way, or is that?
I think I see what you're putting. That pointer cone is on the wrong side of the Chicago box. You're right. That should actually be down here.
I missed something. Okay.
Good catch.
That would be evil to do that in the design of a course. Put the whole box there and just put the cone on the outside. How many people would DNF that?
I mean, there's no way to make it through that. Maybe you could make it through that gate. I don't know. It's beside the point. So we'll move on. Okay, so you stayed tight around the sweeper. Depending on how much space is here, you might have been right on this cone. Again, if it was only 5 feet away from the Chicago box, you're probably not going to touch this one. If it's 50 feet or 70 feet away from the Chicago box, you would be covering too much distance and overall slowing yourself down if you didn't apex this cone. So if this is drawn to scale, we can assume these are far enough away that you're probably going to be on this cone. Probably pointed a little bit toward the bottom of this map, just a little bit. That way you can make a little bit of space and get turned in before the Chicago box. Okay, you make it around the Chicago box with a super late apex. You're already turned in. You're accelerating out of the Chicago box, hopefully. Depending on how tight this is, how much grip there is here, you might or might not be able to accelerate until you've gotten out of the Chicago box. But the idea is that you're late apexing as much of this 3-cone slalom as you reasonably can so that you can start your straightaway as early as possible, because that's what this is a very long, high-speed straight all the way until you get to this cone right here. You're probably going to want to be on this cone right here. There's not any particular reason to be way out here, but this is just pretty simple. You're going to come out here, and you're going to late apex this cone as well. In a motorsport situation, you can generally look at corners in two different ways, two different sides of a linear scale. You have slow turns and you have fast turns. Slow turns, like the Chicago box, are going to be the extreme end of late apex. The faster a turn is, the closer you're going to come to a geometric apex. So this one is going to be reasonably fast, depending on what the grip level here is. If I recall, Dylan, this is kind of right around a hump in the parking lot. So your car might be a little off balance actually as you come around here. So it may not be all that fast.
It depends where you put it. There's some dips and some raises in the parking lot. There's some moments there where you can get a lot of extra grip, or we've done it before where we purposely put something on an off-camber section to mess with you. So one of the beauties of our events is you do get a new course every event. There are similarities between them and certain elements that we will reuse, but you get a lot of variability out of the same parking lot a lot of times.
Yeah. So this is going to be a higher speed element, so you're not going to do as much of your turning before you get to this apex cone as you would in the Chicago box. You're going to be pointed more perpendicular to this gate than you would be as you relative to the Chicago box. So you come around here, and then you probably trying to carry as much speed as you possibly can, which means you're going to carry back out to the outside, and you're going to have the driver's side of your car on this cone and go as straight as possible through the finish. There's no reason to be pointed in this direction through this final gate. You're covering extra distance, and you're forcing the car to turn longer than need be. So as you come around this gate, you need to just straighten out as much as possible into the finish. Questions on the racing line? All right, let's move on. Vehicle dynamics. When someone talks about moving the weight around the car, for a long time, I imagined, oh, okay, I guess if we literally move the car, then slightly, a few pounds extra are going to move to the front tires as opposed to the rear tires. Because I was thinking about how the mass is balanced differently. I don't know if I'm unique in thinking about it that way, but it's definitely wrong. We are not talking about the mass shifting on the wheels. We are talking about the weight, the force of the car moving around the four different tires of the car. Under braking, the force pushing down into the ground is all going to be at the front of the car. And under acceleration, most of the weight moves to the back and turning left and right as well. This is really important to understand that if you're in a front wheel drive car and you are hitting the brakes, that's using the front tires. All of the grip is at the front. If you are accelerating, some of the weight moves to the back, but the front tires are still doing all the work. And when you're turning, the front tires are doing all of the work. Your front tires are going to be in a lot of pain. So you need to manage the weight as well as you can to give them the best chance of success. In a rear wheel drive car, it's important to understand this weight balance. When you accelerate, you might imagine every time you step on the gas, your back end is going to come around. But actually, when you step on the gas, all of your grip goes to the rear tires. And a lot of times your rear wheel drive car is going to have ultimately more grip. You're going to be able to do things faster when you're on the accelerator pedal than when you're on the brake pedal or coasting. Because when you're on the accelerator pedal, your weight is better balanced and being better utilized where it needs to be used. We have this traction circle. It's important to keep in mind. You can't do full acceleration or full braking while doing full turning. You can only, your tires can only handle so much. For instance, if you can handle 1 G of acceleration or deceleration, and you hit the brake pedal as hard as you can, and all of your grip is being used to decelerate you. If you try to turn the wheels, there's no grip left to also accelerate you in a lateral direction, and you will just plow forward. If you are hitting the brakes and you need to be able to turn, you have to lift off the brake some amount. If you just remove, 10% of this, your grip usage, all of a sudden we can turn almost 50% of our ultimate grip, right? So a really common way to think about this is if you have a string tied between the bottom of your steering wheel down here and your pedals on the floor. As you turn the steering wheel, you're pulling that string back, and you can't use as much brake or as much accelerator. As you straighten the wheel out, now you have the full ability. You have more slack in that string to use with your brake and your accelerator. Understeer and oversteer. Oversteer, most people know as spinning out or doing a burnout. But it's important to understand that at its core, all oversteer really means is that the car is rotating more than you intended. And understeer is the opposite. Understeer is usually plowing or I don't know what other verbiage there is. When your car is headed straight for the wall on the outside of the turn. But all it literally means is your car is not rotating as much as you want it to. It's not rotating where your wheels are trying to be pointed. An important thing about oversteer is even though we all imagine big smoky burnouts and the car flowing to the outside of the turn, if a car oversteers, more than likely it is going to end up on the inside of the turn. I know this firsthand because when I was at a racetrack one time, it had started raining and I was like, I'm not going to be a weakling. I'm going to take this opportunity to learn how to drive in the rain on a racetrack. And I picked the slowest corner with the biggest runoff on the outside of the turn. And I said, I'm going to practice there. And I practiced. Got the car oversteering and went to the inside of the turn where there was a wall waiting for me. So if you're going to practice oversteer, or if you are oversteering, remember you're not headed for the outside of the turn, you're headed for the inside of the turn. So this happens when your rear tires break loose. Again, we talked about rear-wheel drive cars, really easy to think about, do big smoky burnout. Front-wheel drive cars can also oversteer. They will oversteer. If you have a front-wheel drive car, you're coming to this event on Sunday, I encourage you to try and make it oversteer because it's an important tool in your toolbox to get a car to rotate, right? Oversteer is when the car is rotating too much, and a front-wheel drive car is going to have a little bit of trouble getting the car to rotate because those front tires are overworking. So what do? We move the weight to the front, or more specifically, we're moving the weight off of the back. We can do that by either letting off the gas or potentially getting on the brake. Some amount of deceleration or less acceleration to move the weight toward the front and off of the back. At this point, your back tires have no grip. And so if you just apply a little bit of steering angle, your front tires have all the grip because you moved the weight there, and they will be able to turn. And your rear tires will have no grip, and they will rotate right around and spin you 360 degrees. This is a good tool to learn. Give it a try, but that's what's going to happen. It can be really difficult to do in most street cars because manufacturers care much more about the safety of their customers than performance driving. And they will specifically tune production cars to not do this. So if you're not experiencing this, you might have to try a little bit harder, put a little bit more brake in, really toss the back end around.
I'll note there, if you want to make your car do that, or you want to have your driving dynamics change, one of our region sponsors, Gran Turismo East, is over in Dunwoody, and they've got a technician there who knows how to align race cars really well. I was actually just there on Tuesday. A few of our instructors were there actually this week as well. Great guy for tires, alignments, anything kind of racing related. And the alignment I have in my car is set up specifically for autocrossing. And it makes a difference, though the rear end is a little twitchier and I can adjust my shocks to make that happen more. I don't run that way on the street. I change my shocks back to softer so they don't do what I wanted to do on autocross courses because I'd rather understeer on the road rather than oversteer. I want to see the tree I'm going to hit rather than spin around backwards, as Top Gear would say.
Rear-wheel drive cars will also be able to encounter this throttle off oversteer, as I was just describing, but rear-wheel drive cars can also encounter oversteer by getting on the gas too hard coming out of a corner, right? That's your typical smoke the tires and do a big burnout or spin. Understeer is much simpler. Karen, you have a question about oversteer before we move on?
Oh yeah, I had a question with the oversteer, like the lift-off oversteer.
Yeah.
You know, like when you get off the gas and it starts spinning. So like in a rear-wheel drive car, especially like mid-engine cars, like the SW20 MR2 and stuff, like those are notorious for doing that lift-off oversteer where you get off the gas, all the weight transfers to the front, you get no rear wheel grip, and you spin because The rear tires have lost their grip, right?
Yep. Sorry, was there a question there or just a remark?
I mean, I guess just a remark.
Okay. Yeah, so the MR2s and mid-engine cars in general are particularly prone to that. I think because it's the momentum with the engine behind you, you have all this lateral momentum at the rear. And so when you lift off, you've now moved the grip off, but the momentum, the inertia laterally is still there, and therefore the back end comes right around. In a front-wheel drive car or a rear-wheel drive car, but at least front engine, at least your momentum is at the front, and your back end doesn't need as much grip to hang on. But in a mid-engine car like an MR2, you really got to be careful about letting off the gas because that momentum's going to swing you right around. And an MR2 is much, much happier when you're on throttle. And so MR2s and mid-engine cars in general drive better if you get your braking done before you get to the turn, and then you're back on gas as you go around the turn. A lot of cars in general that applies to, that just gets taken to the extreme with a mid-engine car.
Yeah, I'd say even for because I saw you driving a Miata from our list of people driving. If you are going through, say, that back sweeper on a course, and you just let off the gas pedal, it's going to spin you. You want to have some maintenance throttle through your turn, so you're keeping the weight controlled. If you're not on the throttle, not on the brakes, you don't know where your weight center is. So if you're slightly on the throttle, it keeps the weight in a controlled manner where you know I've got a little bit of weight over the back, most of it into turning, and you can use that to lift off slightly to get the back to rotate a little bit and then get back into it to stop it from happening too much. So you can kind of control that traction circle as you're going on a steering or on a turn by using the throttle but not too much throttle and not being neutral on it. Because if you let off that one, I used to have a Focus ST, the easiest way to get that car to rotate was to take your foot off and slam it down again, and the back end would jump to where you wanted it to go to.
Yeah, for sure. Because like I think depending on the corner, you can have the throttle on just at the limit of what the tires can handle, right? Like,
yep.
If you're taking that sweeper, you have it on just enough to where the rear tires aren't going to spin, but you still have to get to keep the accelerator on through the corner. Because if you let off the gas, you'll go spinning, and if you, depending on how much grip and power your car has, if you have too much gas, you'll spin out.
Same situation, but you want to keep that throttle on there some to keep that maintenance speed, so you're not just slowing down. Especially in a low horsepower car, you want to keep that maintenance throttle to maintain your speed through your turn. Otherwise, you'll just keep slowing and slowing and slowing and slowing.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
On to understeer.
Yes, understeer. So understeer is much simpler to remember. Front wheel drive and rear wheel drive typically encounter understeer in the same way. You're going too fast, and the front tires can't deal with the amount of steering angle that you're trying to give it. When you encounter understeer, the worst thing you can do is turn the steering wheel more. It's everyone's habit, and the faster you can break that habit, the faster you will improve your times in autocross. When you encounter understeer, you have to release don't let go of the steering wheel. You have to remove some steering angles, straighten the steering wheel out a little bit, try and get the tires back in their grip zone. Simultaneously, you probably want to, if you are stomping on the brake pedal, if you are at threshold braking and you are understeering, you probably need to remove a little bit of brakes so that some of your grip can be used to turn the car. If you are accelerating and you are encountering understeer, you probably need to remove a little bit of throttle so that you can transfer some of that weight forward and let more of your grip be used to turn the car instead of accelerating forwards. So correcting understeer is very dependent on if you're currently decelerating or currently accelerating. If you're only braking a little bit and you're understeering, you might try braking a little bit more and reducing your steering angle. That'll shift more of the weight to the front. You can overdo this, as we talked about with the traction circle, right? If you're braking 20% and understeering and you suddenly go to 90% brake pressure, you're probably not giving yourself any more lateral grip with your front tires. You've just now used all of your grip to decelerate. So you got to remember that traction circle and figure, okay, what am I doing? If you're just plain going too fast, there's not much you can do. You've got to remove that steering angle, wait for the car to slow down. It's frustrating, but it's the best thing you can do. The one last thing I'm going to say about understeer and oversteer is I want to talk about snap oversteer. This is what happens to most of us when we're getting started in building this muscle memory and habits. You come into a corner, you're going way too fast, you turn the wheel, nothing happens, you're in understeer. Habit kicks in, muscle memory kicks in, and you turn the steering wheel more. Eventually, nothing's going to happen right away, but eventually the car's going to slow down to a point where the front tires can catch. At that point, let's say I'm turning to the left, the front tires go whoosh to the left, and the back tires, because you're decelerating this whole time, they have no grip. The back tires whip right around, and you immediately went from understeer to oversteer. This is why I'm preaching, do not keep turning the wheel, because that's how you encounter snap oversteer, and that's not helpful. Most of you probably will. Just try to remember, oh crap, that's why David was saying don't do that, and try not to do it next time it happens. I think we've probably already beaten this horse to death, so we'll just move on. Yeah, we beat that horse to death too.
Okay, I got this we're on the last two slides here, and we have time for Q&A if you have any questions for the day of and all that. So next thing we got here is if you are on course and things go sideways, either you DNF, you get lost on course, you spin your car, you plow an entire cone wall. We've had it before where people have hit a record number of cones. It's okay. If you get lost, come to a safe, controlled stop. Find a corner worker. They'll probably be yelling at you and flailing their arms and trying to point you back on course in the first place. And ask them which direction to go. It's okay. We've all gotten lost before. Even some people who have been autocrossing for 40, 45 years at nationals have gotten lost. One of them's local to us. So if you get lost on course, we'll help you get back on where you're going to go. Your first run, every single one of you will have an instructor in your car, likely for the entire day. If you're doing the instructed level, you'll have an instructor in your car the whole time. So don't be afraid to ask questions if you get lost. We'll help you find the way. If you spin, put both of your feet on the clutch and the brake. If you don't have a clutch, put both feet on the brake. We want you to come to a safe, controlled stop. We do give you, for that diagram, those red circles, we give you a safety barrier between you and obstacles. And if we don't, our safety steward did the course wrong, and we're going to correct that. But we all walk the course in the morning, not only looking for the way we're going to go, but for any potential issues we have with the course design. And so we give you room to spin. We do not give you room to save it. So we've had people put a car into the curb before because they ran off course, and rather than trying to lock it down, put the brakes and the clutch in, tried to save their car. Again, I'll say it repeatedly, we give you room to spin. We give you room to mess up. We do not give you room to be a hero. And that thing you might hit may be a person, it may be a fire extinguisher, it may be more cones, it may be another car. We want everyone's car to go home at the end of the day the way it came to the event, which is hopefully all in one piece. If you bring your car in two pieces, we'll have to, make sure it passes tech. But if you lose control of the car, bring it to a stop, figure out where you're at, get back on course. If your car having an issue, wave a corner worker down, and we can get it out of the way. And we do have dollies and a couple other tow straps and things we can use to get it back to the grid there. I don't expect anyone's car to have any issues that way, but it has happened before where someone's running out of gas. Maybe a battery came loose or something that way. Our area is serviced by tow trucks if that's necessary. I think in the last 6 years I've been doing this, that's happened 3 times.
While we're talking about it, if your car does run into trouble, like oil is spilling on the course and it's still running, right? Maybe you can drive it back to grid. That's fine. We don't need to tow it back to grid if it's still running. Don't drive it while dripping oil on the racing line. That's like our one exception. We will let you drive not on the course.
Yes, yeah, if you have any issue with your car, let us know. We have instructors there. A lot of us are willing to share our car if needed. Couple of things to note of that one. If you want your instructor to drive your car, more than welcome to. We will only drive your car about 80%. We don't want to break your car, and we just want to show you how to drive it better. You can also get in your instructor's car with them, and they can show you their lap there. Again, they won't be going crazy on it. They're just trying to show you how to do better on course. Just let them know and talk to them and see if they're comfortable with doing that stuff out there. So that should be all we have for what to do if things go sideways. Other sideways things I'll note there, if you are experiencing any signs of heat exhaustion, heat stroke, if you're feeling lightheaded, we will have ice and water at the corner stations, at the trailer. We've got people who are medical professionals on their day jobs. They don't try to do it on the weekends all the time, but don't overdo it. If you feel stuff getting hot or stop sweating, please let us know, and we'll do everything we possibly can to get that back under control. Because I've last year at our Bristol event in Bristol, Tennessee, at the Speedway, I ended up getting heat exhaustion, and I was knocked out for the next day entirely after I got back to normal. So we don't want that happening to you. Again, it's going to be a hot weekend, so sunscreen, water, and Friday night, try and take it easy and don't go partying too hard. I'll leave it to you for the last minute extras.
All right. So some stuff that didn't deserve an entire slide. I have a harness in my car, but before I did that, I wanted to be as tight as possible in the seat. When I am pulled tighter into my seat, a couple things happen. I feel the weight of the car move much more easily. That lets me drive better. And secondly, I don't have to spend as much physical or mental energy staying in my seat, and I can spend more physical and mental energy driving the car. So how do I do that when I don't have a harness? First thing I do is I scoot the seat all the way back. In most cars, I'm 6 foot tall, so most of the time that means I scoot the seat all the way back. Then one of two things happens. If the seatbelt ratchets, then I will pull the thing all the way out to trigger that ratcheting mechanism. Then I'll push myself into the back of the seat and get as much of the slack out as possible. Pull, 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 get all the slack out, and then scoot the seat forward as close as I can. So the seatbelt's already tight, and then I want to get it even tighter by moving the seat forward. Either reach down and grab the little lever, hit the button if it's an electric seat, whatever. I'm going to scoot the seat as far forward as I reasonably can such that I can still safely operate the car. At that point, I'm going to look like a marshmallow, and it's going to be ridiculous, but it's going to be great. I'm going to feel the car move. I'm going to be locked in. It's wonderful. Again, this depends on your car, your body shape, your seatbelt, etc. Do what you can. It might take you 5, 10, 15 minutes to figure out how best to make this work for your car. So try not to do it when the grid worker comes and says it's time to go. You should have this figured out already before then, or figure it out before your next run. If your seatbelt doesn't ratchet, if you pull the thing all the way out and then you release it a little bit and you can still pull it out again because it doesn't ratchet, then what you do is you scoot the seat all the way back, pull all the slack out that you can, and then while it's as tight as you possibly can get it, yank it really hard as quickly as you can to engage the locking mechanism. Then you can lean forward with your chest to hold it locked while you scoot the seat forward. And as you scoot the seat forward, you can simultaneously lean back into it, and now you've locked yourself in. If you haven't scooted the seat far enough forward, the seatbelt is going to get some slack and it's going to release, and it won't do you any good. Again, your body shape, your car, your seatbelt, all of that's going to change. This may or may not work for you, but it has helped me tremendously in every car that I've driven or I haven't or ridden in. I will do this in the passenger seat as well. If one of my 2 students is here, you will see me do this in your car when I ride with you. It makes a big difference. Hands, try to keep them at 9 and 3. It is not fast to drive like this. You don't have the precision that you would if you were holding the steering wheel at 9 and 3. If you're having a really hard time breaking the habit of 10 and 2, that's manageable. You should not be at 11 and 1, and you should not be at noon. These are not precise ways to drive a car. Course notes on your walk, they can be really helpful. Again, when I decide that I want to be fast at a given event, I will take my phone out because digital works for me, but paper might work for you. I will do something to take notes about what corners I think are important, what key cones are important. Maybe I don't ever pace slalom, but if I did, I might pace a slalom. Whatever is helpful for you. Course notes may be something that you find useful either this weekend or in your future autocross endeavors. If you're on all-season tires, which I imagine most of you are, for one, we don't care if they're ultra-high performance all-season or Grand Touring all-season or the worst all-season, because in this hobby, all seasons are just all seasons. They're summer tires, and we care about what summer tires you have. But if you're on all seasons, they're just all seasons. There's a strong possibility that you will need to air up your tires, because as you turn, the tires aren't going to be stiff enough. Literally, there's not enough metal in the sidewall, and they will roll over. And so you need to use air pressure to prevent them from rolling over. If they roll over too much, 2 things happen. One, you go slower. The rubber on the sidewall of your tire is not as grippy as the rubber on the bottom of your tire. And then the second thing that happens is you potentially damage your sidewall. You run through that rubber, and now you damaged your tire. So that's unlikely to happen, but in any case, you want to make sure you're not rolling over too much. So you probably will need to air up your tires to some amount. Chris, go for it. You guys can just unmute yourself and ask questions whenever you have.
Is there a general, depending on the tire, but is there a general rule on what PSI you should be running, at least for an event like this?
Yeah, hot hatches, golfs, focuses, etc. If you're on all seasons, I'd probably start them at 38, 36, 38, 40, something like that. See where they go. Talk to your instructor. They'll definitely help you. There are tricks like chalk or just looking at the tire very carefully to see how much rollover you're encountering. If you're in something heavier like a 4,000-pound muscle car like a Charger or something like that, you're probably going to need a little bit more pressure than that. You might be going up to 45 or something. Again, I never run all seasons on something that heavy, at least not at an autocross, so I'm not really sure. Your instructor will absolutely help you out. And we will have Dylan, we have a compressor.
Yeah, we have an air compressor there. We've got people with individual compressors and tire pressure gauges and all that. So we'll be good on that one.
No one should feel a need to go up to 45 PSI before you get to the event. You are absolutely welcome to show up on your normal street tire pressures and just work with your instructor to take a good guess at what your first starting pressures should be. If you want to err on the side of caution and maybe just go up 4 or 5 PSI from your manufacturer's recommended, that'd be a great starting point.
Just remember to check them before you leave the house. We don't want any flat tires.
Yeah. Video. Okay, so this is my video. It's just a screenshot. We're not going to walk through a video that I took. I might have chosen this specific frame very carefully, but it can be a very useful tool. It can also make you awesome and famous on YouTube, unlike me. But what it can do is, if you place it in the right spot, can help you figure out how close you are to cones. As you can see right here, this was a really good learning opportunity for me to be like, hey, that was good. I need to do that again, because this is backsiding a cone. I did not hit the cone with my front tire, and I just barely rolled over the corner of it with my rear tire, backsided. Ideally, I would have a camera on both sides of the car, and I'd be able to get frames like this on the right-hand side. Most of the time when I watch video, I'm like that far off the cones, and I use the video as a learning exercise to keep reminding myself, I need to get closer to the cones, I need to get closer to the cones. Video is really good. Not only can it help you figure out how close you're getting to the cones, I also use it after my first run if I haven't memorized the course yet. I'll just watch the video over and over and over again until I've memorized the course. So as you get more and more into this hobby, you might decide that it is time to invest in some form of video tool. Talk to lots of us. I absolutely love data. I could spend another hour and a half talking to you about data, and I might actually host that session sometime if anyone wants to do that. So
I will share in the chat here. That's actually our Facebook page, or that's our Atlanta Club page. We've got a community page and then a main page there. That's the one usually after our events we post photos and videos thread. So if you have videos you want to share with us, it's a great place to do it.
we'd love to
see
see it.
them.
I love watching everyone's autocross videos. So yeah, if you get video of your run, I want to see it. And if you want, if you're curious, we can also provide feedback. We, the Atlanta region, can, Reddit can, lots of people. If you want feedback on a run and you have video of it, we can. That is enough information that we can help you. Just video. Okay. Finally, before we close out, let's talk about what I would like everyone to be focusing on for Saturday's event. Most importantly, try to get your eyes up. I want you, as you're entering a corner, I want you to eye that entry point. That's the brake marker. As soon as you figured out where the brake marker is, your eyes move over to corner exit. Once you're in the corner, you're eyeing both corner exit and the entry of the next corner. You're looking roughly two pieces, two phases ahead throughout the whole course. Backside cones, really important. It's going to be one of the hardest things to do, right up there with keeping your eyes up, looking ahead. You're going to come into a corner way too hot. You're going to understeer, and you're going to end up early apexing almost every corner until you get it right. And it's not going to feel as dramatic. It's going to feel probably slower when you finally get your eyes up and you start backsiding cones. It's going to feel less, maybe, fun. You might have to redefine your definition of fun because things are going to come at you slower when you do it right. And you're going to look at the time and all of a sudden it's going to be faster. So try to prepare yourself for that. When you are looking straight down in front of you, and you're plowing into every corner too fast, it's going to feel very frantic. And that might feel fun, but it's going to be slow. And if you're having fun and you don't care that it's slow, tell your instructor. They won't hold it against you. But if you want to get fast, tell your instructor that too, and they'll help you through it. Threshold braking, that's a really common thing a lot of novices have trouble with. They're not accustomed to hitting the brakes as hard as the car can. If you haven't hit ABS or locked your wheels up at some point during the event, you haven't tried hard enough. Hit the brakes harder. Threshold braking is important. There's no reason to come straight into a corner at 60 miles an hour and only use 50% of your brake pressure. The brakes are there. Use them, all of them. It would be also really good if you can spend a few laps trying to focus on feeling the weight shift around the car. The faster you can get a feel for what it's like to shift the weight, the sooner you'll be able to utilize that as a tool to apply grip where you want it. Never coast. This goes right along with threshold braking. There's no particular reason to come into a corner or like stay between two corners and just coast between them. You should always be doing something on an autocross course. You should be full throttle, full brake, or full grip somewhere on that traction circle. There's no reason to not be full at the extreme of 1 point on that traction circle. Don't be in the middle of the traction circle ever on an autocross course. And I think Dylan and I both talked your ears off for long enough. So I've got time to kill. If anyone has questions, feel free to just unmute and ask away.
Anything related to autocross in general, the weekends, national tours, track days, any of that stuff.
Other motorsports.
So wait, Dylan, you're the one with the 2021 Miata, right?
Yeah.
So like, how is it to drive, right? I mean, I've driven the ND Miata like once or twice as a test drive, and it's like, yeah, it's really nice and refined. Like, how does it feel to push it to the limit?
So it's funny. I've Larry Farrell's one of our instructors for the weekend. He's got an NB, and I drove his car and then my car, and they feel very similar in terms of body roll and dynamics. The steering is just so much tighter on the ND, and you've got about 50 or 60 more horsepower. So they've kept that Miata feel through the years. I've got the hardtop, and so it's a little quieter inside of the top up, but it still feels like a Miata. It's fantastic how they've kept that dynamic over the decades of car type.
Well, it's honestly like kind of phenomenal how they managed to keep the weight almost the same.
Yeah.
Like they use magnesium on the wheels and all sorts of stuff. It's like what 10 kilograms in between the NB and the ND. But you get like 50 more horsepower. So
yeah. I've got lighter wheels than the factory ones. I think the ones I've got are 14 pounds a piece.
Damn. I'm only 16, right? I've only had my license for a couple of weeks by now, so I'm excited to come and get an opportunity to safely take me and the car to the limit.
I'm glad that you're doing it. That's a fantastic thing to do, especially when you just got your license, because it's a great place you can learn to mess up and not, run off into the bushes.
Yeah, I've been sim racing for a really long time now, but now is the time where I can actually come and take some of that and apply it to real world driving.
Nice.
So,
especially if you have a wheel, sim racing can be a real boon to help you get started in motorsports. It can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, make sure 16 needs a minor waiver or no?
I've already signed that. I've already gotten the card
awesome.
and everything.
Just wanted to make sure on that one.
Yeah.
So, Karen, just so you know, under 18 years old, you are not allowed to work course. You are not allowed to be on course picking up cones, corner captain, etc. If someone assigns you a worker position on course, just politely let someone know, hey, by the way, I'm 16. I'm told I'm not supposed to work on course, and we'll find something else.
And this applies for both points and intro and everything else as well?
Yeah.
All right.
Now, this is an SCCA rule, not specific to our region.
Okay.
Yeah, glad to have you, and glad to have someone who's enthusiastic about it, especially at 16.
I mean,
I didn't know about it till I was 25, I think.
I mean, I remember like even when I was like 10 or 11 years old, it was like, hey, these Miatas are really cool. I really wanted to race one. I was like, damn, they're expensive. And now I finally got one. It's like, yeah, can't wait to try it.
Awesome, man. It'll be a good day on Saturday.
Yeah, I signed up for Sunday too, so we'll see how that goes.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Do you guys have the address of the place?
Yeah, so it's Atlanta Motor Speedway, which is in McDonough. I will pull that up now. It is 1500 Terra Place, and that is Hampton, Georgia 30228. I'll put that in the chat here.
Thank you.
Basically, when you get there, you'll drive in the main entrance. You'll turn to the right once you get to the end of that road. It's a loop road that goes around the speedway. We are in the first parking lot on your left once you turn to the right. And we will be there about 6:45, 7 o'clock, getting our trailer set up. I believe we open the gates to everyone per the email at 7:30.
Yep, that's what the email says.
Between between laps there, if you need to adjust your car or if you just want to take a break or anything like that, how do you let someone know you're not going to get into the next lineup?
Ideally, you will have enough time that you won't have to skip a run.
Okay.
But it's not a problem if you do. You can either skip your run or just ask the grid worker when they come by, because they're literally going to be walking right past you, and you'll get to know them because it's going to be the same person. When they come by, if you're not ready, just be like, hey, can you come back to me after 5 cars or something like that? And they'll come back and send you.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
that process can differ at more serious events. Like if you ever manage to make it to a national event, you don't really get to just pause for an extra few minutes. And you either take your run or you don't, but you're a long ways off from a national event. Even at a local points event, if you just need an extra minute, the grid worker will happily just skip you and come back in a few cars.
And if you love it so much you want to go to tours, the Bristol one's already full. That's the closest one. Solo Nationals in Lincoln, Nebraska, registration for that opens, I think, in about a week. That is a fantastic time, but a huge dive into the deep end.
It's an excuse for 1,300 people to party for a week straight, and there might be a little bit of racing in the middle of the day.
We will have some people actually staying on site on Saturday as well. I know we're bringing lunch on Saturday for everybody.
Yes.
But we've got a few of us that stay near there and everything. So we'll have people in the area this weekend. Not sure where everyone's coming from. I would say check traffic before you come down. Sometimes Atlanta can be a bear. Sometimes it might be better to go around Atlanta, through Atlanta. It just depends on where you're coming in from. But I would check traffic before you come down. And then when you go to leave as well, do that as well. Again, the cops know we're there, so don't speed on Terra Boulevard.
All right. Any last questions before we head out for the night? All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We can't wait to see you on Saturday and hopefully Sunday. And,
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. See you Saturday.
Yep.
see ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time, guys.